for today's panel. It's actually something over the past 3.5 years that we've been doing this we've never done before. Emilie, John, and myself, we've never been on this side of the panel, and so this is the first time this actually came up as part of feedback when we do the NPS survey. And so we're super excited to do this for the first time. Hopefully we're just as good at answering the questions as we are to ask the questions. But huge round of applause, without further ado, for WalkMe for hosting. And I'm going to turn it over to Janice to tell us a little bit more about WalkMe.
Hi everyone, welcome to WalkMe. I believe this is the third time that we've hosted here. Has anyone been here before? Okay, welcome back. For all those new people, welcome for the first time. Really excited to have you here. So who here is familiar with WalkMe or knows what we do? Kind of a quick show of hands. Okay, great. Even if all of you guys raised your hands, I would still tell you more about WalkMe. So, all right, so let me tell you a little bit more about WalkMe. So we pioneered the digital adoption platform. So what is that? What's digital adoption? What's that? Quick exercise here, just to kind of want to get everyone, involved. How much do you think that on average a company spends on software per employee per year? Anyone?
$20,000.
$20,000 per employee per year.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
$2,000.
$2,000. Okay. Great guess. It's you're both right, some closer than others. So, for example, a chemical company, on average, spends $3,000 per employee per year on software alone, just software. But then that can go as high as $12,000 for an insurance or banking company, right? So that's a lot of money. Multiply that by how many employees you have in a company. A lot of money, a lot of investment. What's your strategy to get those users to adopt that software? That's where WalkMe comes into place. So WalkMe layers, excuse me. So WalkMe layers on top of any website or HTML application and provides in-application guidance. We can walk you through a process step by step without you never having to leave that application. So think about when you start a new job and you have to enroll into your benefits. WalkMe can take you through that enrollment process step by step. Not, never needing to read a PDF and going back to the app, watching a video, tapping your coworker onto the shoulder who's probably on calls. We can all do that right within the application. And that's just one example of an internal use case, right? WalkMe is also leveraged by a lot of our customers, by our external users as well. So for example, Amazon Marketing Services leverages WalkMe to take their vendors through how to best sell their products on their website. So that's just a teaser. If you guys are excited about that, if that excites you, we are growing, we are hiring. We have Noga in the back over there, our employee experience manager, as well as Adrian, our talent acquisition manager. So please stop by, chat with us after. We are growing, we are hiring. Would love to talk to you as well. So it's a little bit about WalkMe and myself. So my name's Janice, as we had mentioned. I manage our strategic customer success team here. And before I pass it over, I just want to make a comment about customer success here at WalkMe and why I'm so excited to have you guys here. So I really believe that customer success is the backbone of this company because we're carving out a new space, right? And when we talk to customers and we talk about digital adoption, a lot of times they're either so excited and they're jumping for joy, yes, digital adoption, or they're like, what are you talking about? So it's so important for our customer success team to not only be project managing, building relationships, implementing, building, QAing. We really need to be here to educate our customers and our champions to be CSMs themselves. So with that, I'll pass it over to the panel. Thanks.
Thank you. As the chair goes down. So hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us tonight. So this is a pretty special night. If you've been to the meetups before, you obviously recognize this panel of co-organizers. But before I get started, I want to do a quick introduction about myself. So my name is Lauren Struthers. I am a customer success team lead at Box, and I help run a team of enterprise customer success managers based out of our headquarters in Redwood City. And so this panel, I think, is pretty interesting to me because I've sat on both sides of the interview process, as I'm sure most of you in this room have as well. And so I actually want to ask a question to the audience before we get started. So how many of you in the audience today play a role in the interview process, whether you're a hiring manager or you support interviewing of candidates? Oh my gosh, that's well over 50%. All right, another question, and if you feel so bold to answer and you're not sitting next to your boss, how many people had an interview for a customer success position in the last year? Okay, a little less than that. So you can see that we have a diverse group here, so people who sit on both sides of the interview process. And today's meetup, just as a reminder, is about hiring great customer success teams. So we will cover both the perspective of what it's like to be a candidate, as well as what it's like to actually hire for excellent customer success organizations. So without further ado, let's do a brief introduction of the panel. So let's start with you, Junan. So Junan has spent the last 5 years at Optimizely. He's held many roles, including a solutions architect, director of global services, and director of customer success, which he holds now. So Junan, why don't you tell us a little bit about Optimizely and the team that you manage there?
Yeah, so Optimizely provides A/B testing and experimentation software. We provide it to, you can run it on your website or your mobile app, as well as deep in your back end. We basically allow you to test different versions of your customer experience to figure out what is the best performing version. So you might think Amazon has a yellow button that says add to cart. Who knows if that's actually the right way to do that or the right thing to say at that time for that customer. And so we allow customers to test in that space.
Amazing. And can you just give us a quick introduction about the team that you manage? Like how many people does that look like?
So I run our North American customer success team, and so it's across all 3 of our segments. So what we have is digital, which I think most companies would call mid-market. We call it digital because we focus heavily on the digital native companies that really view the digital space, the digital experience being kind of critical to their success. Then we've got enterprise, which is your Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 type companies. And then what we call strategic. So strategic, it's basically hand-selected our most strategic, highest-paying customers. And the difference between those 3 segments is really the book size is the same, but it's actually the number of customers that you might manage. So in digital, a CSM may manage 50 to 60 customers. In enterprise, it's about 30 customers, and then strategic, it's 3 customers. So yeah, and then as a company, we're about $100 million run rate, 400 people, and yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Emilie. So Emilie Davis, she recently took on a role as head of sales and success at productboard. And Emilie has a lot of previous experience building customer success teams from the ground up. So previous to this, she was working at Periscope Data. And she'll be taking on a similar challenge at productboard in her new role. So Emilie, tell us a little bit about productboard and what it means to be a head of sales and success.
First of all, thank you for the intro. It's like so beautiful, very eloquent. You'll probably say it better than I can. So what it means to be taking it on, I joined about 3 weeks ago and am building, like you said, from the ground up. So I have 2 CSMs to date, 1 AE, and looking at building both sides of the equation. There at productboard, basically productboard, we help product teams achieve product excellence. If you think about it, there currently isn't an end-to-end platform that really helps them determine what is going to be the best thing to build next. And yet, being on the customer-facing side, all of us here would appreciate how incredibly important that is. So that's kind of what we're all about. I should definitely do this further. Wow. Thank you. And how long does it take her to recognize that? Don't even need the microphone. Cool. And yeah, like I said, building out the team there.
Amazing. Okay. And lastly, last but not least, we have John Gleeson. So John Gleeson is head of enterprise and mid-market customer success at KeepTruckin. And John has had experience working in multiple cities, which we were just discussing. So Ottawa, Halifax, New York, and now San Francisco, and I want to talk about the different markets in just a minute. But first, why don't you tell us a little bit about the team you manage at KeepTruckin?
Yeah, so I manage the mid-market and enterprise teams at KeepTruckin. So basically, if your trucking fleet is more than 50 trucks, you're sitting with somebody on my team. So we are about 30 people between San Francisco, Nashville, and actually Islamabad, Pakistan, which is pretty cool. And yeah, any more to the question than that? That's the team. Yeah.
There you go, short and sweet. Okay, so let's just get into it. I really want to start with the basics. So what does an ideal candidate profile look like to you? As I'm sure a lot of you are curious to hear. And what are some of those attributes you look for in someone who's interviewing at one of your companies? Maybe we can start with you, Junan.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of table stakes things that we've talked about that you've probably heard about, so customer empathy and client-facing skills and project management and all those things. But I think for me, what separates a really great CSM from a good CSM is two things. So there's one, hustle, and I think the reason I think that hustle, and it's kind of a weird thing to quantify, but hustle is super important because you can't teach it, and especially with something like customer success where it's continuing to evolve, right? Like I'm sure even at Box, you guys have had customer success forever, but every other year, every year, there's probably some new innovation, and so it constantly requires you to learn. So that hustle is, I think, super, super important, and it's also really difficult to look for, to suss out. And then I think the second thing is this consultative mindset, and so I think everybody has talked about this before, but I really, really do believe that you have to be prescriptive with customers, and it's extremely hard to do that when you also own the renewal and things like that, so you're always trying to please them. But having a consultative mindset to challenge the customer and to really look out for what's best for them, I think those are the two attributes I really look for.
Amazing. Emilie, maybe you can take the angle of, you're hiring some people who are going to be leading up this customer success team. So who are you looking for right now?
Yeah, so I look for 5 key attributes. The first one really is curiosity. At the end of the day, I think great CSMs need to be able to understand the heart of the problems that are occurring and be able to not just listen to the symptoms. I mean, a lot of times you'll be hearing a lot of reasons why things aren't working potentially, or that goals aren't being achieved, and your job is to have extreme accountability, turn that scenario around. But in order to do that, you really have to understand the why. You have to be a bit like a product field manager as well, and understand the 5 whys. So curiosity is a really big one for me. In tandem with that, obviously empathy. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone knows that one. We need to be able to really feel what our customers are going through in order to evoke the change that is often necessary. The third one I'd say is rational optimism. That one for me is big. It's never an easy job. If someone says being a CSM is an easy job, don't take that job. Is the short of it. I'd say you definitely need rational optimism. It's a grind, and you need to be that light for them, as well as internally and externally. So I'd say rational optimism third. The fourth is collaborative. At the end of the day, you're managing people, projects, and expectations, both internally and externally. And the fifth, and probably one of the most important, and particularly in delineating between maybe more of a customer support and customer success emphasis, is really the strategic initiative and whether they focus on outcomes. So can they see the forest from the trees? That's a really big one for me. That's kind of baseline. And then the other thing that I think about in answering your question more about the ideal profile or candidate profile, it's obviously super contextual depending on the business and the stage. So one thing that I think about is good, better, great. And so for me, good at a baseline, you need to meet and be aligned with your company cultural values. Better for me is where there's role fit alignment, and great is where there's company, role, and stage fit alignment.
Amazing.
All right, wow. What can I say that hasn't been said already? I'm going to answer the first, or the question first next time and send it this way. But no, I think like the 2 big ones for me, one, resiliency, because you're going to be on the front lines of hearing kind of sometimes like the worst case scenarios a lot of times, because your best customers, you've got to work to proactively reach out to them. Your worst customers are calling you every day, right? So I think there's an element of resiliency there. And then I think the ability to ask like the really, really hard questions, and to really understand what their pain point is. It just like, you can gloss over that pretty quickly, but you really have to be able to dive into it. So we're gonna get to interview questions, I believe, in a second. But just like, in an interview, like how well somebody is asking the interviewer questions really matters to me, because it tells me that they're gonna be able to get to what the heart of the matter is and how to make it work.
Actually, I have one more thing. So I didn't answer the question about like an ideal profile or anything like that, but I actually think that it's super interesting because I actually don't think on paper there is an ideal profile. I've had so many interviews where on paper tons of CSM experience, but then when you come into it, it just doesn't pan out. And so I've actually shifted away a little bit in my sourcing and working with recruiting, where I actually look for consultants, people that have been in consulting, because you have that client-facing experience, but I can teach you how to run an EBR, I can teach you all the stuff that goes into like the onboarding and the customer life cycle, but those core attributes that are really difficult to learn and that you need the experience, I think are hard to find.
Absolutely.
Junan, is that because you were a consultant?
No comment.
Alright, I get to go first next time.
Well, I think that gives everyone a bit of optimism, because we didn't all just decide that we were going to go into a career in customer success in college. Maybe some of us knew about it, but I sure didn't. And so it gives us a bit of hope that your career can zigzag and you can attract a lot of diverse candidates. I really want to, get right in there and figure out, like, how do you interview at your companies? I think it'd be great to be a fly on the wall to some of your interviews, because I'm sure you've done hundreds over the years. But maybe, John, can you describe, like, what does your interview process look like at KeepTruckin, and what are some of the scenarios you ask of your candidates?
All right, cool. So I have to admit, I think I'm still learning how to interview and still getting better at interviewing. And the more I interview, the more I realize there's a better way to interview. But our interview process starts with basically the sourcer and the recruiter. There's a screening element there. We're just so busy that we really do want to have a lot of conversations, but we also want to make sure that once it gets to people on the customer success time, that their time is spent in a meaningful way and on people who we think could actually already be a fit at KeepTruckin. So after you go through the screening, there is an interview with the manager of customer success. So this is if it's a customer success manager. So there's an interview with the customer success manager. It's a standardized list of questions. We really want to set up consistency in this process, because at the end of every week when we're reviewing everybody that we talk to, we want to be able to baseline people against each other, and we want to try and remove as much bias from that process as we can. So once you pass through that phase, then we get people to actually do a little bit of work. So on our team in mid-market, we do a lot of executive business reviews. And so we actually send out a scenario and we get everybody to present a mock executive business review to us. And there's a lot that you can learn in this, and a lot of the skills that we just talked about, even if somebody's never done an executive business review or quarterly business review before, you can test their problem-solving abilities, their ability to ask questions, how well they present. Are they able to tell a story with data? We drop a lot of data points, and I think that's really important when you're reselling the value of a product quarter over quarter. So can they tell a story with data? We do that in front of a panel of 3 people. Myself, I sit in on them, the manager, and then we have a rotating panel of 2 customer success managers. If you get through that, then it's onto the home stretch, and you have a conversation with myself. And we really value the input of the team as well. So that's why we have customer success managers who are doing it now. Because not only are we checking for those core skills, but we also want to build our culture, and we want to bring in unique perspectives, and we also want to bring in people who can also, adapt and fit into our culture and ultimately make it better. So team plays a big role in that process.
Cool. So ours is a little more basic right now, I would say. It's not as thorough. We don't even have that many people. No, I'm kidding. but it's definitely basic. I actually spun it up today. So it's true thing. I thought I'll kill two birds, one stone. Perfect. So I constructed the ideal customer profile, much of what we're speaking about, and then essentially basically spoke with our current CSM and then our CEO and our product marketer to be able to make sure that everyone who's going to be on our interview panel really understands what we're looking for, what is the mission of this role, what are the KPIs, and what are those core attributes. And then we divvy that up, or I divvy that up basically, and make sure that people are assessing across different areas, and then have questions in line with that as well. And so now what the next step will be, we launch the MVP, I'll call it, of that. And so then we'll kind of collect feedback and see what worked, what didn't, what can we improve, and kind of get thoughts back on that, because I think it's one of those things we'll iterate with. But how we got there anyway, I guess, is our screening process is essentially me going through the candidates that apply. To be honest, I'm not a huge inbound fan. I happily spend my Sundays stalking people who I think are in line with the profile, and try and go outbound a lot, because I just have seen much better success with that approach. So normally it's a phone screen and then interview, and then we don't actually do the mock interviews yet. And part of it is because what are you trying to optimize for? And when you're in a heavy kind of scale mode in your company, that's a lot of time, resources, and so maybe you just need to be a bit more diligent earlier on.
So actually our process is very similar to John's. So we have a recruiter screen, and I think the entire process goes from very, very broad, getting more and more narrow as we go through it. So we have a recruiter screen that really just kind of susses out that you're not lying on your resume. And then it goes to the hiring manager, and the hiring manager is still fairly broad, but the goal there is to make sure you're not wasting everybody else's time later in the interview process, and also the candidate's time. And so really making sure that the trajectory of where that person wants to take their career is alignment. They actually have done their homework and actually know a little bit about the role, and then talking a little bit more around the space that we're in. Once they get through that, then it actually is an on-site with the panel. So we've got a number of different CSMs that are currently in the role. We also have added in a solutions architect from our services team. And really the goal of that person is to vet whether or not this candidate can actually learn our product, because we actually have a fairly technical product. And so while you don't have to be a developer, you do need to understand the lingo. And so if we teach you something, can you understand that and conceptualize that? And then I'm part of that kind of round robin and that set of interviews. And then finally, we actually have a mock session as well. We actually don't do a presentation. We went away from an EBR presentation. We actually now do what I call a mock meeting. So it's now the scenario is a mock meeting with a customer where you have to re-engage them. So it's very similar to an EBR, but there's more of a like a challenge in front of them. And I also wanted to see, how do you engage with the people in the room? How do you handle curveballs that are thrown at you? And usually these curveballs are actual questions that we get, and it's kind of cheating in a little bit, because if they make it through this entire process, you now have learned, you've kind of half onboarded yourself because you had to learn so much. But we try to keep it light so that you don't put too much time into it, but there's a huge benefit in that. I think that's it. Was there any other?
Yeah, I actually wanted to follow up with you, Emilie, because I know you, putting you on the hot seat, but I know you and I were talking about recruiting strategies just last week, and one of the things you mentioned was referrals and how important that is to you. So could you expand on that and maybe talk about some of those other tactics that you use to identify potential candidates for your team?
Yeah, so again, I think it's really important to nail what is that ideal candidate profile. If anyone has been in sales, they'll know very well the ICP, or the ideal customer profile, very analogous to that. I think you really want to hone in what's going to be the right person for you, for your company, for the role, and again, for the stage. And so once you've got that, then you want to, in my opinion, kind of go outbound and start looking at what would be a good fit. And so sometimes, as an example, as we all know, and I don't want to divert the conversation to renewal models, but nevertheless I will. And so I'll say that depending, I've seen customer success and have definitely executed on it in many different models, as I think all of us here will testify to. So one thing is I try and also think about, has this person been successful in multiple models and has that adaptability? And so sometimes there's a couple of tricks I have. One, I also like to know who are the best CS leaders in my opinion, and pending if they've left that company from which they were originally at, then it's free game to take their CSMs. That was inspired by you actually. I think you told me that, so I stole that from him, which is another great idea. Always steal ideas. That's a great book, Austin Kleon.
How often do you steal each other's talent?
We don't. That's what I'm saying. They have to have gone from that. That it's code of honor.
But I think the day after she left her last company, I texted her and said, "Anyone good?"
And I said, "Don't you dare." Yeah, so I think that's another one, because you know that they're going to have had the right coaching and will really understand what customer success is. So that's one of the tricks, I guess. But otherwise, I would look on LinkedIn and I would look for different attributes. So one thing I look for is when I search for customer success, I also search for the words like data or product. If I'm looking, for example, I think domain experience is really important. So one of the things I do right now is obviously my ideal candidate would be someone who even has been a product manager, because that's who we sell to, or has sold to product. Because they're going to be clearly more passionate about what we're doing, but also have that empathy and also have that knowledge of the market and the expertise. So then I just search for those things, and then the biggest thing that I'd say is like send a personalized message about why they should join you. I mean, at the end of the day, it's selling, it's a two-way street, and people sometimes forget that, which amazes me. You have to be able to sell them on what they can achieve working with you and working at your company, and deeply care about them enough. So that's the biggest learning there.
I have a question for you.
Hey.
But none of us mentioned domain expertise. I found like it's like kind of has like diminishing returns. I feel like once your like education of your own people gets really good, then the domain expertise piece actually like falls off a little bit, because you can train them. For us, it's the trucking industry. So once you learn the trucking industry, like with one really good person who came from the industry, they can kind of transpose that skill onto everybody else. And then getting back to like those core attributes that we all talked about. Yeah, I changed my opinion on that, because I used to be like a big domain expertise person.
Right. I think the only piece I would add is depending again on your stage. So if you're like hiring, again, I'm hiring for like early CSMs, so I know that having that domain expertise will prove invaluable, because we don't yet have the resources and the knowledge sharing to facilitate that initial learning of it as much so. But yeah.
So I would actually say the different answer. So I think it actually depends on two things. I think it depends on, I think you're right with the stage or the segment of the CSM. I think the second thing that it depends on is actually the maturity of the market as well. So trucking has been around for a good while, and so your customers actually, they understand trucking, so they don't need help figuring out trucking. That said, so in experimentation, A/B testing, like a lot of times the customers that sign up with Optimize, it's the first time they've ever experienced experimentation, and so as we get higher up and more strategic, domain expertise becomes really, really valuable, which is where that consulting comes in. But if you're coming in and you're managing 50 customers at a time, you just don't have the bandwidth to go super deep with our customers, and so I expect less in the beginning, but as we grow up in the segments, then I think it becomes more important, at least for us.
Yeah, no, that's really smart. Right.
Amazing. So as you can see, it really depends on the stage of the company and who you're looking for. I want to go back to this broad theme and kind of take a bigger picture lens. So tell us, what are some of the challenges that you're facing as CS leaders today in today's market? I think you mentioned poaching, poaching each other's candidates, which you don't do. You play nice. But what are some of the big things you notice, especially in San Francisco?
So in terms of hiring, I think the biggest challenge is a failure to emphasize culture as your number one objective early on. Because if you haven't, I mean, it's the foundation of everything, and it's what's going to allow you to be successful. So if you didn't prioritize and emphasize that early on, and now you're trying to hire, that you've created your own biggest challenge, in essence, I think. So for me, that's the number one. The second is just excuses. I don't think you can ever outsource hiring. You need to be making sure, again, that you're sourcing, that you're always putting back into your own talent pool once you take out of it, that you're continually making sure. It's like filling the water up. Like, if you're gonna hire people, then you need to make sure you're continually building your pool of resources as well, I think. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Challenges in San Francisco. There's a lot of really, really cool companies in San Francisco, a ton of them. And I moved to San Francisco from New York, and the biggest change that I noticed between the two places, in New York you have fashion, and you have finance, and you have all of these other industries. In San Francisco, like, the dominant industry is tech startups. So I found in New York, the people who are like opting in to come work at an early stage or even a mid-stage company was somebody who was like reading TechCrunch every day. They were on Crunchbase, like they were just like drinking the Kool-Aid. And to them, like, San Francisco, even though they're in New York, is still like Mecca for that. And here, when I got my feet on the ground, I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be amazing. I'm going to the Wizard of Oz, like. And what I found was, because there's so many cool companies, I would have people actually showing up for interviews, not even knowing really like the ins and outs of our company, or they would have 2 and 3 offers on the table, and you could tell that they weren't putting their best foot forward, or they were, optimizing more for comp, which is obviously like really important, but you also want to have like that element of like passion for what you're doing, and genuinely like curious about what you do. And I found that's been a big challenge that I'm still trying to figure out.
Would you say that when they show up prepared, it's an attribute of hustle?
Oh my God, yes.
So I second that. Actually, I think that is a huge challenge. Hiring is one of the biggest challenges. I've been multiple open headcount in San Francisco, New York, and Austin. And actually, going to your point, the Austin candidates, Austin's starting to change a lot, but the Austin candidates were the ones that put in the most work, the most preparation to come really, really prepared. Whereas sometimes you'd see people in San Francisco show up and like, hey, what questions do you have? I don't know, and then they're making up questions on the spot, or they haven't really thought too much about it. So I think that level of preparation is super important. I would say that hiring is the biggest challenge, and I think hiring regionally is also very challenging. San Francisco versus New York, the talent pool is very different. People in New York are a lot more ads and social, versus here there's basically every single technology under the sun here that you have to kind of sift through.
Absolutely. I think we have time for one more question for myself, and then we'll take it to you. So kind of to piggyback on that, tell us about a time you were blown away by a candidate. What are some of the questions that stick out to you as exceptional questions that you've been asked during the interview process?
I'll let you go first.
You don't have to name a specific example, but do you have like interview questions that you think are just really solid, that show that curiosity, or show, yeah.
I think I love it when candidates ask about the bigger picture, and so much more focused on the market opportunity. And I think I've generally been blown away when they've enabled me to think, oh shit, there's a whole nother opportunity I haven't, sorry, we probably can't swear on this. There's a whole raving fan base we've got. They get you to think about the market opportunity differently, or you recognize something. The reason I value that so much is because that's what a fantastic CSM would do. They would come to the table they would show value immediately, and they would already know all of this research we've touched on about your company, and they would be saying, hey, have you thought about this, or have you thought about this, and did you know your competitor's doing that, and how will you beat your competitor there if that's what your goal is? But those types of questions, that to me is exemplary of what a fantastic CSM is.
So actually, the guy who really blew me away in an interview is actually in the room right now. And what he did really well was actually that he was just like so on top of it, knew the ins and outs of it. Like you could tell that he'd done his homework. When he presented to us, there was like a lot of data, and this showed like depth of research, and then even like the subtle things about people. I love like a good LinkedIn stock, and you should like get to know those people, and like don't make it obvious that you stalk them, but bring up those things that build rapport with them, and when you're reflecting on, you're like, okay, yeah, I got how we made a connection there. So just like the ability to sell and connect, and then highlight things about the industry or what you're doing, that just shows like that they're as inspired about it as you are. So that was what blew me away. That's fun.
So did you hire
Did you
him?
Yeah, he's in the room.
Yeah, that's what I was like,
Do we all?
Oh, I should have gone first actually, because Emily stole the answer, right? I think that I'm gonna just triple down on that. I think asking, like I think everybody knows this when you interview, when you're asking a question, it's actually an opportunity. You're still being interviewed. That's an opportunity for you to kind of showcase the research that you've done. And so when you have that industry insight, the market, that's super. Honestly, if you can figure out a way to put me kind of on my back heels, you'd be like, oh yeah, like I didn't think about that. That's amazing, right? Like that's the thing that you remember and blows you away.
Yeah, when you get excited about a candidate, and you walk out of there and you like turn. I was interviewing with our head of customer success, and like we both left that interview and we're like, oh my god, like we need this guy, like because he inspired us, and we felt like we could learn something from him as well. And I think like the best leaders, they want to pick people that they feel like they can learn and are going to make them better every single day. So that's kind of cool too.
Incredible. Okay, so who has questions for our panel here? Go into the audience.
Yeah.
Hi. Would you tell me, each of you, what is your company values, or what are the characteristics that you look in candidates that in order to represent those values?
I love this question. So every chance I get to talk about this in an interview, it gets me super energized. So, well, it's a little cheesy. I'm going to preface it with this. So we have an acronym for our values. So it's called Optify. So it stands for ownership, passion, trust, integrity, fearlessness, and transparency with a Y. And we use Optify in every single decision that we make, whether it's hiring, firing, how we communicate bugs to our customers, how we make and influence and communicate decisions internally, all of that. So everybody actually looks at Optify. We used to have a separate group that would go in and suss out Optify in the interview panel, but actually it's now part of everything. And so you can basically X a candidate immediately if they don't show Optify in kind of their answers.
I'm not going to go through all of them, but one of them is just like kind of passion for the trucker. Truck drivers, they're one of the biggest populations of workers in America. So just passion and caring about this person who's out on the road away from their family, and putting them at the center of everything that we do. And I think as somebody in customer success, that gets me excited, because I think that's like, we want to be a part of teams that are putting the customer first in their decision making.
Yeah, we follow a pretty similar process, I guess, as Junan was describing, whereby one person on the panel will be specifically focused to understanding the cultural alignment. And so I would say probably one of our biggest values for sure is curiosity, actually. And again, it's because of what we do, I think.
Oh. Who else has questions?
Alrighty. So I was wondering, how do you get candidates excited to talk to you guys in the first place? So how do you either get someone in your pipeline, or once you're talking to them, what gets them like super jazzed about working with, I guess, each of you guys?
So I think the biggest thing again here is like understand who they are. Biggest thing, read anything they've publicized, understand, kind of from their background, what things, in particular, the LinkedIn background is a great area, how someone describes themselves, what do they get most excited about, and then, tailor accordingly and just be like, hey, I read that you love taking initiative, what better way than to join as our first CSM? Great, but just that obvious kind of tailoring and making sure you pave a way for them to see an alignment between what is their vision and your vision.
Yeah, I would say same thing. There's so much information out there on people, and just like understanding. I think at the end of the day, like people want to work with, people want to do business with, people that they share a connection with, and there's all of these like nuggets around the internet that you can start to make that process a little bit easier.
Gotcha. So that's a lot around like getting candidates, like the one-to-one interactions. Junan, do you guys do anything like bigger picture of, hey, here's how we get our whole pipeline going for the CS team or something like that as well?
So Optimizely has been on the best places to work for a number of years in a row, and so I would say almost every candidate cites that as a huge reason for why they initially looked at Optimizely. We also have a building right at the dead end of New Montgomery, so that helps too. But I think the more you can get the name and the brand of the company out there as well will help build pipeline, right? So if people have heard of your company before, whether you're writing a blog post on customer success, or maybe it's even somebody in product or something like that, I think that is something that will help to build brand equity, which is really what drives top of funnel for recruiting and sourcing.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and the Glassdoor piece as well too.
Yeah.
I think like you guys have a great Glassdoor, and that probably comes up first.
Yeah.
First thing, look
That's
at
the
you
first thing I would
excited.
check.
Yeah. Oh, you guys are great. 100% CEO approval. All right, cool.
Thank you very much.
So Emilie, you mentioned your 5 points, and John mentioned resiliency as things you're looking for. I was wondering, in the interview, what are the things that you use to determine that they have those things you're looking for?
Yeah, so I guess some of the questions that come to mind as well is just trying to do a bit more scenarios. So, sorry. So I'd say one thing that I always love to understand and dive into is what's the most challenging part? How do they describe the most challenging part of their work? It's always interesting to see what people find most challenging in their job and why. And then how they work to overcome it and how they're continually improving themselves. So that goes into that like learner mindset as well. I love to have them describe a churn risk scenario and how they've been able to turn an account around. There's a lot you can unveil from that. Just being able to, again, see the forest from the trees, like what was their strategy here? Did they, to begin with, already have this indicated through some health score they were monitoring, or was it just some reactive scenario? How they set about creating the strategy for execution and who they were able to effectively collaborate with internally, externally. All these things are excellent data points to be able to validate without